Step Change in Safety is committed to raising and promoting awareness of mental health among the energy industry workforce, both onshore and offshore. We recognise the increasing level of mental health challenges our workforce is facing. We also know that this can pose major risks to safety and well-being. Mental health is about how we think, feel and behave. It is easy to conclude that an individual is either mentally healthy or mentally ill. In reality, it isn't as straightforward as that. Your mental health is not static. It is much better viewed as a continuum, which ranges from excellent mental health at one extreme to crisis point at the other extreme. Your position on the continuum will change based on a variety of influences and circumstances. Some days, you may feel like you're thriving or even excelling. On other days, you may feel you're just getting by, or struggling, or even reaching crisis point. It's okay not to be in the thriving and excelling zones all the time. Life will throw its challenges at you. The important part is to recognise where you are and then to be able to steer yourself away from the struggling, crisis direction of the continuum. In support of Step Change in Safety, some very courageous individuals connected to our industry have volunteered to share their mental health experiences. These short videos cover a variety of topics, including depression, anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. These personal experiences highlight signs and symptoms that I'm sure we can all recognise to a degree. They also illustrate some real-life examples of what can trigger a change in mental health and move someone along the continuum. They cover important coping strategies and how these are adapted over time, including the importance of speaking to someone about how you're feeling and not keeping it all to yourself. Most importantly, these videos give hope that you can come back from a real crisis or from struggling to a better position on the mental health continuum. I'd like to thank all of the contributors for having the courage to share their stories. In addition to helping reduce the stigma attached to mental health issues, they've also been motivated by the opportunity to help others learn from their experiences.
In this video, I've been speaking to Steve Rae, who is Executive Director, Step Change in Safety, and a Piper Alpha survivor. Steve is going to talk about how a life-changing shock to his family shaped who he is today, and how that shock, the death of his father, forced him to develop coping strategies for all the challenges he was to face in later years. Let's hear what Steve has to say.
Let me introduce you to the Steve Rae you know, who is the Steve Rae, who's the Executive Director for Step Change in Safety. Known as an industry survivor from Piper Alpha, 1988, actually stayed in the industry and had good fortune and through hard work and effort reached the dizzy heights of the boardroom. But what's important about today's talk is that there's a person behind that boardroom image of Steve Rae who has had some challenges around his life that are associated with mental health or resilience and how he coped with some quite adverse situations in his life that has made him who he is. And I think the message that the Steve Rae that you know wants to get across is there is hope and there is methods of coping with most of the things you'll deal with in your life. And the intention is that we can share some personal experiences that will help you with that. I'm going to talk about a number of triggers through my life that in modern terms are viewed as mental health, potentially crisis, or at least challenging areas in mental health. When these triggers occurred in my life, mental health wasn't talked about. It was just events in your life that would shape individuals. It could break or make individuals. It could break or make families and actually cities. And I'm going to talk about the triggers from an early age in my life that I think helped shape me and made me the person I am, but also it's things that people can expect to see through their life because life can't just be about good times and happy times. It's how we respond to loss, how we respond to grief, how we respond to adversity that makes us individuals. And I also believe that part of helping others who may not be as able to see that, to share experiences with them, so hopefully it gives them hope that they can come through their challenging times in their life. In 1976, on the 6th of February, my father died suddenly through the night. And that was our first and probably most traumatic experience as 5 siblings and a loving wife and mother. To say we were rocked to the core would be an understatement. The whole street was rocked to the core. My father was a larger-than-life figure, very, very supportive of families around the street, always willing to help, well thought of, and a genuinely good guy, a healthy guy. That, for me, looking back and with hindsight, was truly a life-shattering experience in mental health terms. And immediately you feel you're on your own, because you all deal with your own grief differently. My sisters dealt with it differently, my brothers dealt with it differently. My mother knew she had 5 children to look after and could not actually grieve properly because she was afraid it would affect us as children. So what I took away from that in years going forward was that I had to become very resilient very young. I lost a lot of my enjoyable years because I recognised very early after my father passed that Mum could not bring us up alone on her wages. So I didn't really think a lot about that as a young adolescent, teenager if you wish, but I knew it would affect me going forward, and it made me almost steely and almost withdrawn for a period of time. My mother used to be concerned, she told me about it when I was much older, that I withdrew almost from family life and became a very inwardly looking individual. And I think if people know me now, they'll think quite the opposite, that I'm quite an externally focused person. I didn't appreciate how driven I became, but it certainly it started my self-sufficiency about how do you cope with adversity in your life. Typically, you may need help, but you better buckle up your belt, because a lot of it is going to be how you develop your own resilience and your own character. And I think that's part of that has stayed with me forever and has helped me in some other adversities I've had, such as we'll talk about Piper Alpha and being a survivor on Piper Alpha, but also helped me deal with my divorce and separation and the thought of losing my children or access to my children as a father. These things all were, I'd say, assisted by my first trigger point, which was the loss of my father. Because coping for me is about helping other people get through their challenges. That for me is part of my coping strategy, is if I know I'm helping others get to a place where they're able to function and able to get by their place in the continuum, that helps me. That is how I'd treated life for the age of almost 13 to being 26, was whatever you're faced with, get it done, move on. Make a decision, live with it, move on. And I think I'd never really dwelled on any sort of real difficult decisions. I'd rather make them and live with them. And my mother always said that. She said, Steve, she said, you'll make some stupid decisions, but you seem to always come out right. You know, and I think you just develop that resilience. And so from being on Piper to 3 years after, I was working in an office. Thankfully, my employer had been good by me. And people in that office had no idea I'd been on Piper Alpha, because I just wouldn't speak about it. It wasn't particularly, I'd managed to keep myself out of the press despite being an Aberdonian. And that's the way I liked it, because for me, I'd put it away. It was gone. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that people who find themselves in a place where they think they're the only person in that place, by talking about their experience and sharing it with others, they'll probably feel better about it themselves.
When we began filming, I was expecting Steve to focus on his experience on board Piper Alpha. Instead, he preferred to start way before that. And this highlights how much we all make assumptions about others and where they are at. I assumed the pivotal point of Steve Rae's life, the greatest challenge to his mental health, would be his Piper Alpha experience. It wasn't. It was the death of his father, which I knew nothing about until we started recording this film. There are a number of points from Steve's interview I believe are worth highlighting. First of all, when his father died, he stated that he, his sisters and his mum reacted differently. The loss affected them differently. We all react differently to loss, whether that be a bereavement, divorce or relationship breakdown. No two relationships are the same. Secondly, Steve stated his first coping mechanism was to withdraw. This is very common when we have to face a stressful and mentally challenging situation. Sadly, it's not a great strategy and can be harmful in the long term. This is why it's important to gently step in if we feel a colleague or friend has become withdrawn. Gently ask how they are doing, and we shouldn't be afraid to tell them we're asking because we have seen a change in them. And if we ever become withdrawn, we should try to reach out to someone we trust and speak to them. Thirdly, we're all different and develop different strategies for coping when events knock us down the mental health continuum. Steve discovered the method that helped him build self-resilience was helping and supporting others. Finally, if we talk about our issues, we may find we are not alone in facing the same challenges. The Step Change in Safety Mental Health Awareness Pack, comprising this series of short films, a quick start guide and guidance document, has been created to raise awareness, initiate discussion. However, there are many available sources of mental health support and information, and if you require immediate help, please contact your own GP, your occupational health provider, the oil and gas chaplaincy, your private health insurance, the Samaritans, or go on the Step Change website for help and advice. These are just a few of many options available out there, but whatever you do, please don't let it fester. Talk about it.